are Unhappy Interface Robot 1984. Your sole joy in this artificial life is jumping. Lurking out on the horizon is the ever-watchful eye of Big Brother. He forbids jumping, dispensing immediate, deadly justice for robots that don't comply. Your job is to destroy Big Brother so you and your robot pals can jump all day, every day with impunity. Either you've grossly misread the work of George Orwell, or you're playing Atari's iRobot, which also has nothing to do with Isaac Asimov. The object of iRobot is to deplete the shield of Big Brother's giant eyeball. You do this by moving over the red portions of the platforms, turning them blue. There are various obstacles impeding your progress that must either be shot or avoided. And try not to take too long, as the bonus counter is also your time limit. Despite strict orders not to, you will have to jump in order to reach certain platforms. The good news is that not only will the game helpfully tell you where you could jump, but will also land you there automatically. It also creates a helpful, solid path under your jump so your airtime is minimized. The bad news is that the ever-watchful eye of Big Brother will end you immediately if it catches you airborne. It's like a futuristic interpretation of the old childhood game Red Light, Green Light. Do you remember playing 3D games in the mid-90s and fighting with the camera to get a good view of the action? Well, this was a scoring feature in iRobot. Changing the angle alters the score multiplier. The harder it is to see your surroundings, the higher you'll score. There are times when your camera is attacked directly. This means you have to change the view to avoid losing a life. After completing a level, you'll get to fly through space to the next board. It's not a leisurely flight though, as you need to deal with tetrahedrons and other obstacles. At the end of every third level, you will enter a pyramid where you get to collect jewels for, you guessed it, bonus points. Every fourth level finds you battling the giant head of Big Brother. He spits cones at you, which must be taken care of lest they turn around and destroy you from the rear. You can distract him by shooting the side of his head, forcing him to turn. He won't fire on you when he's not facing forward. Disappointingly, you can't destroy him. You merely need to survive for 20 seconds, after which time he'll leave you alone to continue on your eye-zapping journey. Actually, any sort of victory against your oppressor is short-lived. There are 26 unique levels that repeat themselves with a new color palette once conquered. Your only real end goal here is to get a high enough score to impress an otherwise uncaring machine. Have you ever popped a quarter in an arcade machine and then suddenly decide that you don't want to play a video game after all? Well then, Doodle City is for you. For every 1 minute of time you spend littering the screen with various game assets, you lose 1 life. This means 3 minutes of doodling per quarter. As there was really no way to save your quickly forgotten artwork, it is little more than a tech demo you had to pay for. Whatever you may think of iRobot as a game, there's no disputing its innovations. iRobot was designed by David Thurer, creator of both Tempest and Missile Command. With iRobot, David unleashed the first game with filled-in polygon graphics. While games with 3D graphics were previously made possible through the use of vector monitors that draws lines instead of pixels, limitations meant that there was no way of hiding the lines of an object that should be behind another. And unlike those early vector-based 3D games, iRobot lets the player change the perspective at his or her discretion. Another first. The final innovation was the game's use of Hall effect joysticks. Essentially, it is an analog joystick that uses magnets instead of potentiometers to measure how far the stick is moved. With fewer moving parts, the Hall effect stick was supposed to be a more reliable alternative to traditional pot-based analog control, though the sticks on iRobot were poorly designed as the sensors slowly crept away from the magnets after time. Nevertheless, revisions of the Hall effect sticks found their way into later Atari titles, such as Roadrunner and Escape from the Planet of the Robot Monsters. For all its firsts, iRobot was probably too far ahead of its time. The unusual and ambitious game design, coupled with its atypical graphics, may have turned off a lot of potential players. According to Atari's production memo, only 750 iRobot cabinets were produced. Up to half of them shipped to Japan, although collectors speculate that the number may be closer to anywhere from 1,200 to 1,500, basing that solely on the serial numbers. Even worse for iRobot's legacy was the fact that the game never found a second life in the home market. There were no ports of iRobot for any consoles or computers. But although it didn't immediately change the arcade scene, the hardware under the hood eventually caught up with the idea behind polygon graphics. This proved especially successful in the racing genre, with Namco's Winning Run, released in 1988, and Atari's Hard Driving, released in 1989. Home consoles would eventually start embracing polygons in the early 90s with the help of special chips, as seen in Star Fox for the Super NES and the home port of Virtua Racing on the Genesis. And thanks to the tireless work of the team behind the Multi-Arcade Machine Emulator, or MAME, iRobot eventually reached a larger audience, playing perfectly fine with a regular analog joystick after some tweaking. Behind the silly backstory and 3D graphics, many have found a fun little game. The early use of polygons are primitive but charming, especially when it dances with color and abstract design like some trippy discotheque. And while it seems daunting, the game does go out of its way to help you figure things out. Once you've mastered it, you'll find yourself skipping around the platforms as if it were second nature. It's not the best game of Atari's legacy, but it is still worth checking out. And most importantly, thanks to the screenshot function of MAME, you now have a way of preserving your Doodle City creations.